Welcome back to the show, everyone. It's DinaKalmeta here. And for today's news, I just have a quick update I'd like to bring to you. And I'd like to take you to this report written by Michael Schneider of the most important news, the economic collapse and the end of the American dream. And he sums it up really well as to what has been happening with peace and safety. And we keep on hearing about peace, and most specifically just recently with the Holy Land, and also President Trump's 28-day peace plan. It's a U.S.-backed proposal to end the conflict in Ukraine, which includes points such as Ukraine ceding territory, limiting the size of its military, and holding elections within 100 days. So that's just a brief, very brief summary. You can actually find the full 28-point Ukraine-Russia peace plan online. You just do a search. Very easy to find. But Michael goes on to talk about the 10 signs that peace efforts are failing on multiple fronts. So not just with what's happening with Ukraine. So he goes on to say it feels like peace is slipping away. In the Middle East, Israel is fighting with both Hamas and Hezbollah once again. In Europe, the Ukrainians and our European allies have rejected President Trump's 28-point peace plan, and that, again, is a moving story right there. Meanwhile, the Russians continue to march forward and capture more territory. In the Pacific, the U.S. and China are both preparing for war with one another. And in South America, it appears that a regime change war against Venezuela could commence at any moment. Could it be possible, he asks, that we are in the final days before global stability is completely shattered? He says, I am extremely concerned about the events that we have been witnessing over the last several days. The following are 10 signs that peace efforts are failing on multiple fronts. Number 1, Israel just conducted a new wave of airstrikes in Gaza. Number 2, Hamas has informed the Trump administration that the ceasefire is over and that they are ready to fight. Number 3, the IDF just conducted an operation in Beirut that took out Hezbollah's chief of staff. Number 4, in response, Hezbollah is warning that a new red line has been crossed and that any agreements with Israel are useless. Number 5, President Trump is very angry that the Ukrainians and our European allies are not willing to accept his 28-point peace plan. And that's coming from the Daily Mail, and that was reported on as of yesterday. But what happened with Ukraine as of the timing of this recording, which is Monday, November 24th? Well, The Guardian is reporting that Ukraine has significantly amended the U.S. peace plan to end the conflict, removing some of Russia's demands. Zelensky may meet with President Trump in the White House later this week, they indicated, amid a flurry of calls between Ukraine and Washington. Ukraine is pressing for Europe to be involved in those talks. The original 28-point U.S.-Russian plan was drawn up last month by Putin's special envoy and Trump's representative, Steve Witkoff. It calls on Ukraine to withdraw from cities it controls in the eastern Donbass region, limit the size of the army, as I stated earlier, and not to join NATO. During negotiations on Sunday in Switzerland, led by the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Zelensky's chief of staff, the plan was substantially revised. It now includes only 19 points, and Kyiv and its European partners say the existing front line has to be a starting point for territorial discussions. They say there can be no recognition of land seized by Russian military, and that Ukraine should make its own decisions on whether to join the EU and NATO, something the Kremlin wants to veto or impose conditions on. So it's not really looking good for this particular peace plan. It went from 28 points down to 19 points. And I'm sure that doesn't make President Trump happy, but we may find out later on if in fact that is true and where the peace plan is moving forward. Okay, back to Michael's article. Number 6, the Ukrainians and European allies continue to act as if they have a great deal of negotiating leverage, but meanwhile the Russians just continue to gobble up more Ukrainian territory. On Friday, Kyiv said that the Russian forces had launched 6 attacks, but said nothing about it changing hands. The Russian Defense Ministry statement on Friday said that 3 other villages in the Donetsk region, as well as other regions, were now under Moscow's control. Number 7, dragging NATO directly into the conflict is the only possible way that Ukraine can win their war with Russia. And why do European officials, he asked, keep talking like this may actually happen? Recently, the head of the armed forces in France publicly stated that the French parents need to be emotionally prepared to have their children, I can't say that word here on YouTube, but you can see it, while fighting Russia. Number 8, the U.S. and China both continue to prepare for an impending war in the Pacific. The U.S. has outlined the contours of an impending war with China, which also includes some Pacific Island groups, and preparations for the clash are underway at an accelerated pace, according to Newsweek. Now, in regards to China and the U.S., a very startling headline came out just this morning. And as you can see on the screen, the Chinese president tells Trump, return of Taiwan to China, an important part of post-war international order. So this is definitely a concerning headline. Now, the United States is not formally obligated by treaty to militarily defend Taiwan in the event of an attack. However, we do have a strong legally mandated commitment under the Taiwan's Relation Act, or the TRA, to provide Taiwan with the means to defend itself and considers any non-peaceful resolution a matter of grave concern. Now, there have been other nations that have said that they would help defend Taiwan in case China went in there and tried to take Taiwan by force. Now, just recently, Japan did state that they would react if China were to go in there forcibly to take over Taiwan. And there were some other nations as well. So this is definitely a very concerning headline here. And speaking of Japan, there's been a lot of tension as of recently between Japan and China. According to CNBC, China's escalating dispute with Japan reinforces Beijing's growing economic influence and penchant for abrupt actions that can create uncertainty for businesses. So as of recently, Japanese concerts in China are getting abruptly canceled as tensions continue to simmer. And I reported on a recent spat between China and Japan in regards to Taiwan. So definitely some tensions there. But let's move on to Michael's list. Number 9. If the U.S. was going to start conducting airstrikes in Venezuela, it is likely that a NOTAM would be issued first. So the fact that a NOTAM was just issued for the entirety of Venezuelan airspace until February 19th should deeply alarm all of us. So what is a NOTAM alert? It's an alert that warns pilots of temporary or time-sensitive hazards affecting flight safety, such as closed runways, airspace restrictions, or navigational aid malfunctions, otherwise known as Notice to Air Missions. And the FAA issued it, notifying pilots of potential serious hazards in certain airspaces. For the Maiquetía Flight Information Region, this area covers all of Venezuela and parts of the southern Caribbean Sea. Importantly, the warning cites a potentially hazardous situation and heightened military activity, as I just read to you, over Venezuela and waters just off of its coast. So it's looking kind of shaky over there in the Caribbean. Finally, number 10, based on conversations with 4 anonymous officials, Reuters is reporting that the U.S. is very close to making a major move against the Maduro regime. The report goes on to say the United States is poised to launch a new phase of Venezuela-related operations in the coming days, 4 U.S. officials tell Reuters. Reuters is not able to establish the exact timing or scope of the new operations, nor whether U.S. President Trump had made a final decision to act. Reports of looming action have proliferated in recent weeks as the U.S. military has deployed forces to the Caribbean amid worsening relations with Venezuela. He goes on to say the dominoes are all lined up and ready to fall. War has been a major theme in 2024, he says, and I am entirely convinced that war will be an even more prominent theme in 2025. Up to this point, we have been extremely fortunate. So far, nobody has decided to use any types of weapons of mass destruction, but once someone crosses that threshold, everything will change. And hopefully, cooler heads will prevail. But in a nutshell, that's what's happening as it pertains to peace plans and the prophecy Wars and rumors of wars. So I want to hear from you guys. Out of the 10 points I read from Michael's report, tell me, which one concerns you the most? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Also, when you have a free moment, come and visit me on my social media pages, as well as my website at www.cww7news.com. All right, everybody, thank you so much for watching. And until next time, God bless and stay safe.